Okay, let's talk about something really interesting. This trend of brands we all thought were, history, suddenly making a huge comeback.
So why are these old brands suddenly cool again? Well, the answer really comes down to the youngest generation of consumers. Today, we're going to break down their playbook, because here's the thing. In fashion, if you can win with the youngest generation, you pretty much win with everybody.
I mean, you've probably seen it all over your social media feeds, right? People saying, Coach is back. What was once kind of that forgotten brand you'd see at the mall is now, believe it or not, one of the hottest brands out there.
And it's not just the high-end stuff. I mean, people are saying Gap is cool again. Gap, for the first time in what feels like 20 years, it's getting this major second look from a whole new generation.
And then you've got these digital native brands, these disruptors like e.l.f. Beauty. They have absolutely mastered viral marketing, and because of that, they've become the #1 most purchased cosmetics brand for Gen Z and millennials.
So the big takeaway here is that none of this is happening by accident. It is a very calculated revival. And to understand how it works, we're going to start with the blueprint for a luxury turnaround, the story of Coach.
Okay, so let's talk about Coach. This is seriously one of the rarest comebacks in all of fashion. You have to remember, Coach went from being the it girl bag of the 2000s, that iconic C logo was everywhere, to a brand that kind of lost its shine. Its luxury reputation really took a hit. But now, yeah, it's back.
So what happened? Well, for about a decade, its value and that special heritage feel got really watered down. It was everywhere, especially in outlet malls with constant discounts. But after that, the brand started this really careful, meticulous journey back to the top. And guess what? It worked. They ended up blowing past their rivals.
And let's be clear, the damage was severe. I mean, you could literally walk into a store and they just hand you a 20% off coupon. When you do that over and over, it just completely drags down what the brand stands for. It's equity. And you can see it right here. It wiped out a massive chunk of its value.
So how did they pull it off? Coach's leadership rolled out this brilliant 4-step plan. First, they brought in a new creative director, Stuart Vevers, who came from Louis Vuitton, so, he gets luxury. Then, they moved away from those super heavy logos and really started leaning into a more youthful vibe. But the most important part? They refocused on product quality. And, at the same time, they embraced that Y2K nostalgia that was just starting to bubble up online. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just about bringing back old styles. It was tapping into this feeling, this yearning for the optimism and that fun, less perfect vibe of that era.
And wow, the results really do speak for themselves. While the huge legacy luxury players like LVMH were actually seeing sales decline, Coach was posting double-digit growth, 2 quarters in a row. They were literally stealing market share from the very top, all because they figured out how to win over Gen Z and millennial shoppers.
Okay, so that's the luxury turnaround. Now let's switch gears completely and look at a totally different strategy. Let's talk about how e.l.f. Beauty used its digital smarts to basically challenge the entire cosmetics industry. Yeah, this isn't a comeback story. This is a story of pure, straight-up disruption.
e.l.f. basically built its entire empire by mastering what we call dupe culture. But here's the thing. Dupe culture isn't just about finding a cheap knockoff. It's a much bigger shift in how people think, especially for Gen Z. With inflation and all this economic uncertainty, being a savvy shopper is cool. It's about finding incredible value, something that works just as well, instead of just paying for a fancy logo. And then you go on social media and everyone validates that choice for you.
Their model is so simple, but it's absolutely genius. They just watch social media, see which high-end, expensive products everyone's talking about, and then they go and create a high-quality version for an amazing price. It's like a never-ending cycle of free marketing for them.
Now, it's funny, the CEO, he doesn't like the word dupe, but he's totally open about the fact that they take inspiration from the prestige products their community is obsessed with. What that really means is they are listening, like really listening, and using all that feedback to innovate at a crazy fast speed. And e.l.f. is taking all that success and making some huge, aggressive moves with it. Get this, they just bought Hailey Bieber's skincare brand, Rhode, which is only 3 years old, for $1 billion. $1 billion. That is a massive statement. They're not just here to disrupt anymore. They're here to dominate.
It is a super bold play, and you can bet Wall Street is watching this one closely. Why? Well, first, the deal came with a ton of debt. That means a big chunk of their profit for the foreseeable future is just going to go to paying back loans instead of, growing the business. And on top of that, they're still really reliant on China for manufacturing, which is a huge risk if new tariffs come into play.
All right, for our final story, let's look at a turnaround that's happening as we speak. We're talking about an American icon that, let's be honest, most of us had completely written off. We are truly watching the very early stages of a potential comeback.
For decades, Gap wasn't just a place to buy clothes. It literally defined American fashion. Remember those iconic ads? The perfect white t-shirt, the jeans everyone had? But then it just fell out of style. It became this big, bloated company that was always on sale just to get rid of stuff. And for years, the brand that was actually making all the money for the company was its sister brand, Old Navy, not the famous one that started it all.
So what's changing? They're ditching that vague, boring messaging for moments that actually matter in culture. And the person leading the charge is Richard Dixon, the same executive who gets the credit for that genius revival of Barbie. So what are they doing? They're leaning into these viral ads with celebrities. It's all about moving at the speed of culture and creating that magic energy on social media that feels real and exciting, not like a forced corporate ad.
And hey, we're already seeing some early signs that it's working. Sales are starting to tick up, and here's the really important part. They're doing it on their healthiest gross margins in 20 years. All that means is they're making more profit on every single thing they sell, which is a huge sign of a healthy brand. But this turnaround is nowhere near done. And they're also facing those same big threats from potential tariffs on stuff made in Asia.
Okay, so we've looked at three really different stories here, right? A luxury comeback, a digital disruptor, and an American icon in progress. So what's the common thread? What's the new playbook for bringing a legacy brand back to life for a Gen Z world?
Well, the playbook really seems to combine old-school business basics, like being absolutely relentless about making great products, with a super deep understanding of today's digital culture. It's about bringing in fresh leadership with a new vision, which is exactly what Coach and Gap did, and it's about listening, like obsessively listening to your community, which is ELF's whole game.
But, and this is a big but, this success is fragile. All three of these brands face some pretty major outside threats. For Coach, it's all the new competition from DTC, or direct-to-consumer brands, the ones that just sell online and can be super nimble. And for ELF and Gap, it's that huge risk of tariffs on imports from China and the rest of Asia, which could just completely wreck their profitability.
So all of this leaves us with the big question, right? In a world where trends move at lightning speed and there are all these huge global risks, are these comebacks built to last? Is this a sustainable new reality for these brands? Or is it just a temporary moment in the sun before the next big thing comes along?